Hello everyone, my name is Bamidele Fadeyomi and I work on the design for service and repair team here at Microsoft. Today we will be disassembling and reassembling the new Surface Pro 12-inch. First off, I'd like to give recognition to all the engineering effort that went into making this device a possibility. Now while the repair processes for the Surface Pro 12-inch are a bit different from other Pro devices, this device builds on top of learnings from previous Pro devices. Detailed instructions and safety guidelines are available in the service guide, which are posted on the Microsoft support site. Carefully read the service guide before beginning a repair. Repair should be performed on an ESD work surface with grounding to protect the unit. Additionally, we recommend removing jewelry such as watches and rings and tying back long hair. Before beginning your repair, make sure the device is unplugged from power and that the battery is fully discharged. Follow the recommendations in the service guide to fully discharge your device. The tools you'll be needing for both disassembly and reassembly are a metric ruler, an Allen spudger, ESD-safe tweezers, a plastic opening tool, a 3mm Allen key, a Phillips No. 1, 3IP Torx Plus screwdrivers, cleaning swabs, isopropyl alcohol, and microfiber cloth. For display removal, we will use a display debonding tool, debonding pick, 2-inch spring clamps, a Hall-Baird spudger, and a piece of tape provided in the replacement packet kit. For display reassembly, we will use a display bonding frame, which comes with a foam pad that we will use, and an approximately 32 kilogram weight. In this video, we will be using ruck weights. All tools and materials are available for purchase on iFixit. First, we remove the kickstand. The kickstand is secured by 2 screws to the enclosure. Open the kickstand all the way to expose the 2 screws securing it. Using a 3IP screwdriver, remove the 2 screws securing the kickstand. Close the kickstand to about 45 degrees and then gently separate the kickstand from the enclosure. This exposes the device serial number and a QR code that links to that specific number. Next, we will remove the display. We will start by preparing the display debonding tool. We recommend using this tool to reduce the risk of damage to the display and to preserve the display for reuse while performing replacement of the internal components. Using the ruler, mark 2 lines from the tip of the pick at 3mm and 6mm. This will help us ensure that we don't damage anything internally during the debonding process. We will place the guitar pick inside of the debonding tool and assemble both parts of the tool with a Phillips No. 1 driver. When placing the pick into the tool, be sure that your lines are facing away from you when putting it down into the tool. Now we will change the bit and adjust the depth of our tool to the 3mm line, ensuring that it is aligned with the top of the Surface tool. The next step is to prepare the device for debonding. First, apply the provided H-tape onto the front camera region of the display, ensuring that the front camera is inside the circular cutout of the H-tape. Apply the rest of the tape around the enclosure and ensure the tape is firmly placed. Next, we will run the plastic opening tool through the insertion points to prepare the device for the debonding tool. We will now cut through the adhesive on the left and right edges of the display. Mount the debonding tool to your work surface with the clamps. To start the debonding process, hold the device with both hands and insert the opening pick into the right side speaker mesh. This will be our entry point to the device. Push the device to the right to cut through the adhesive. You can push it side to side on each edge to ensure that the adhesive is cut. Stop when you get to the corners. Remove the device from the debonding tool and repeat the same steps for the left side of the device, ensuring that the adhesive is fully cut on either side. After cutting through the left and right edges with the 3 mm depth, change the opening pick depth to 6 mm. This change in depth is only for the top edge. To remove the adhesive on the top edge, we'll be cutting from both the right side and the left side of the top edge. Move the device through the debonding tool, ensuring to stop in the region where the tape is applied. For the top edge, it is normal to expect more resistance due to the presence of the cameras. We will then set the device flat and carefully run the plastic opening tool along the edge of the display, separating the top edge completely from the enclosure. Once the top, left, and right edges of the display have been separated from the enclosure, gently lift the top edge of the display at a 45-degree angle, ensuring not to damage the bottom of the display. Holding the display in that position, we will use the tip of the hollow bit spudger to cut through the bottom edge of the adhesive. Once the bottom edge adhesive has been fully cut, gently separate the display from the enclosure. Be careful as you lift it because of the FPC connection. Flip the display and lay it on the bottom edge. Before moving on, we will install the battery protective cover and lay back the display on it. We will now ensure battery shutdown of the device to make sure power is not flowing during the repair process. From this point onwards, we also recommend that you count screws and place them away from your device as you go along. This is to ensure that there will be no loose screws remaining in your device when it comes time to reassemble it. We want to avoid causing any possible damage to the battery or to avoid creating any other unsafe conditions. Remove the piece of conductive foam and tape covering the battery connector with a tweezer or a spudger. Then, using a 3IP screwdriver, remove the 2 screws for the battery connector bracket and then remove the bracket afterwards. Using a plastic spudger, disconnect the battery connector. Now, the device is fully shut off and safe for further repairs. Next, we will disconnect the display connector from the display itself. Remove the display shield using tweezers by lifting at the corners. Finally, using the spudger, disconnect the display connector. Since we will reuse the display, remove any residual adhesive from the enclosure and the display. It can be easily peeled away. We remove the battery. The battery is fastened by 7 screws. Take off the battery cover to proceed. Using the 3IP screwdriver, remove the 7 screws on the battery frame and set the screws aside. Using both hands, gently lift the battery up and away from the enclosure as shown. Ensure that the display connector is not bent 90 degrees during this process. Be careful to only handle the battery by the frame on the sides. Also note to always protect the battery from accidental pokes or impacts and bends during repair, and account for all screws upon completion of the repair process. We will remove the thermal module. First, we'll remove the second conductive tape on the right side of the shield lid using a plastic tweezer. Now, if your device has an NFC module like this one, use the plastic opening tool to disengage the latch of the NFC module and then pull out the cable from the motherboard. Using plastic tweezers, carefully disassemble the center shield lid directly on top of the thermal module by lifting the corners. While the shield lid cannot be reused, we will be separating the NFC module from the lid and reusing it during reassembly. Next, using a 3IP screwdriver, we will remove the 7 screws of the thermal module in the order shown. These screws are marked with the thermometer icon. Then using a plastic opening tool, it will gently lift at the edges of the thermal module to separate the thermal pad on the motherboard from the module. Proceed to lift and remove the thermal module. Using a plastic spudger, remove the old tin pad from the motherboard with the cleaning swab or microfiber cloth in IPA. Next, we remove the microphone modules. There are two microphone boards on the left and right side of the front camera secured by the deck. Using a 3IP screwdriver, remove the 3 screws holding the deck in the sequence shown. Proceed to remove the deck and place it aside. With the 3IP screwdriver, remove the screws on both the left and right microphone boards. Using the plastic opening tool, separate the microphone boards from the main motherboard and place them aside. We will remove the front camera. Using the plastic opening tool, disconnect the front camera connector from the motherboard. Next, use the plastic opening tool to carefully pry the front camera away from the enclosure in the manner shown. We will remove the infrared camera. In a similar fashion, we will use the plastic opening tool to disconnect the IR camera connector from the motherboard. Again, use the plastic opening tool to carefully pry the IR camera away from the enclosure. We will remove the rear camera. It is secured by 2 screws and connected to the motherboard via an FPC. First, we remove the aluminum tape using a plastic spudger. Once the tape is removed, proceed to disassemble the shield lid on top of the camera connector using a plastic tweezer. We'll be using the plastic opening tool then to disconnect the rear camera connector from the motherboard. Using your 3IP screwdriver, remove the 2 screws securing the right camera to the enclosure. Lastly, we'll remove the conductive foam underneath the rear camera FPC and then use a cleaning swab in IPA to clean any leftover adhesive residue. We will now remove the left and right speakers. Each speaker is secured by 4 screws as shown in the wayfinding icons. First, we'll start with the right speaker. Using your 3IP screwdriver, remove the 4 screws securing the right speaker. Then proceed to take out the right speaker and place it aside. Next, using a plastic spudger, disconnect the left speaker connector from the motherboard. Now we'll also use a 3IP screwdriver to remove the screws securing the left speaker. Next, we will remove the USB-C module. The module is currently secured using 3 screws and a conductive PSA underneath it. It is connected to the motherboard via 2 FPCs. Firstly, we'll remove the bracket securing the USB-C connectors by using a 3IP screwdriver to take out the 1 screw still holding the bracket. With the 3IP screwdriver, disconnect the remaining 2 screws securing the module to the enclosure. Next, using the plastic opening tool, we will proceed to disconnect the 2 USB-C connectors. Now we remove the USB-C module. We will do this by carefully inserting a plastic spudger underneath the module to separate it from the PSA securing it to the enclosure. Once this is done, take out the USB-C module and make sure to clean any adhesive residue underneath it. Now, we will remove the buttons. This subsystem includes the buttons, stiffeners, and the button switchboard, and the switchboard cable. To begin this, we will need to partially disassemble the left antenna deck. Using a 3IP screwdriver, remove the 3 screws securing the left antenna deck onto the enclosure. Now, using the plastic opening tool, gently lift the left antenna deck away from the enclosure. We will also be separating the tape holding the antenna cable onto the magnets. Ensure that the tape is not damaged or crumpled in the process, as this tape will still be reused during reassembly. Use the plastic opening tool to disengage the latch of the switchboard cable, and then carefully pull the cable away from the motherboard. Next, we will remove the 2 screws holding the button switchboard using a 3IP screwdriver. Then proceed to remove the switchboard and cable, carefully peeling the cable away from the enclosure. Now, we will remove the retention clips, keeping the buttons in place. Insert tweezers in the enclosure opening and apply a light upward force. The clips will then snap off. These clips will not be reused, and we will use new ones during reassembly. Next, push the buttons out of the enclosure. Next, we'll remove the display FPC. It is underneath the right shield lid on the motherboard. Using plastic tweezers, remove the shield lid on the left side of the motherboard by lifting the corners of the lid. Next, use the plastic opening tool to disconnect the display FPC from the motherboard. Ensure that the connector is not lifted from the sides, but from the top side. Proceed to use the plastic opening tool to remove any residue pad on the motherboard. Lastly, we will remove the motherboard. It is secured to the enclosure with 4 screws. To clear the removal path for the motherboard, we will need to remove the 2 antenna connectors using a plastic spudger or opening tool. Next, we will remove the 4 screws securing the motherboard with a 3IP screwdriver. Using both hands, gently lift the motherboard out from the enclosure. Congrats, we have successfully disassembled the device. Now we will begin reassembly. For reassembly, we will use a plastic spudger, ESD-safe tweezers, a 3IP Torx-less driver, T-putty syringe, cleaning swab, a lint-free cloth, a battery cover, 32 kilograms of rock weights, a foam pad, a display bonding frame, and IPA of 91% or greater. Collateral such as screws, tapes, foams, and adhesives will be replaced with the new ones provided in the replacement kit. Some have dash numbers, as some parts have multiple screws, and they define the order of assembly. There are a few preparation steps we would need to take before we begin reassembly of the device. First, we will start by pre-assembling the deck. Firstly, inspect the deck to see if the 2 pieces of mic mesh and 1 piece of the ALS diffuser are intact. If any is damaged or missing, ensure that it is fully removed and replace them with the replacement material provided. Next, we will check to ensure that the microphone rubbers are properly assembled into the deck. If the 2 rubber pieces came off during disassembly, assemble both into the deck with the smooth side of the rubber facing up, and then press with your fingers. We will prepare the NFC module for reassembly. Gently remove the NFC module from the shield lid. Using a cleaning swab and IPA, clean the adhesive residue on the back of the module. Then we will apply the new adhesive backing to the module. We will carry out the pre-assembly steps for the microphone boards. Use a plastic tweezer to carefully remove the mesh from the mic boards. Once the used mesh is removed, take the provided new mesh and attach it to the boards using the gold lines as guidance for positioning. Ensure that the mesh is not misaligned. Next, we will be pre-assembling the PSA onto the USB-C module. First, we'll use a plastic spudger with IPA to clean residual adhesive on the back of the USB-C module. Next, we will apply the new adhesive backing using the line marks for guidance. We will prepare the front and the IR cameras for reassembly. First, we will clean any residual adhesive on the back of the front and IR cameras. Then we will apply new adhesive backing to the front camera using the pins as guidance. Next, we will be preparing the button switchboard cable for reassembly. First, we will be using a cleaning swab with IPA to clean residual adhesive on the bottom of the switchboard cable. And then we will apply new adhesive backing onto the bottom of the cable. For the last pre-assembly steps, we will be pre-assembling the thermal interface material onto the thermal module. First, we want to check and use a plastic spudger to remove any residue of thermal material left on the thermal module. Then use a cleaning swab with IPA to clean off any remainder material. Gently remove the liner covering the thermal material and apply it onto the thermal module. Now we will begin reassembly of the device, but first we'll clean off any residue adhesive or thermal putty left on the enclosure. Now we will start with the reassembly of the motherboard. Place the motherboard into the enclosure. Take the screws with the circuit icon for wayfinding and fasten it with a 3IP screwdriver. Then we will install the display FPC. Align the FPC to the motherboard connector using the gold lines as reference and gently press to connect it. Next, we will install the right shield lid. Remove the release paper from the thermal material on the shield and assemble the lid. Press around the edges of the shield and ensure the shield is not lifted or deformed. We will install the USB-C module. First, we'll remove the blue release paper from the back of the USB-C module. Then we will assemble the module onto the bucket, ensuring that the adhesive is assembled onto the metallic plate and that the ports are fully located into the enclosure cutouts. Using a 3IP screwdriver, fasten the 2 screws of the USB-C onto the enclosure. Next, carefully connect the 2 USB-C connectors onto the motherboard using the gold lines for reference. Lastly, we will assemble the USB-C bracket and use a 3IP screwdriver to fasten the screw to secure it to the enclosure. We will install the button subsystem. Check and ensure that the switchboard cable is attached to the switchboard, not misaligned, and secured by closing the black latch. Now, we will assemble the power and volume buttons. Align the locating pins on the power and volume buttons with the hole in the enclosure and assemble them. Next, install the button clip into the space between the buttons and the enclosure posts. Bend the button clip upwards until it breaks. Next, we will install the switchboard into the alignment posts. Then secure it with 2 screws using a 3IP screwdriver. Remove the release paper on the switchboard cable and connect the cable to the motherboard, flipping the latch to secure the cable. You can press down on the cable to make sure that it is secured to the enclosure. We will install the left and right speakers next. Assemble the right speaker into its position and secure it with 4 screws using a 3IP screwdriver. Next, assemble the left speaker into position and secure it as well with 4 screws. Carefully assemble the speaker connector to the motherboard. We will install the left and right microphone boards. First off, use the syringe provided in the replacement kit to deposit about 32 milligrams of thermal paste underneath the left microphone board. That will be equivalent to the amount needed to cover the marked area on the enclosure. Now we will assemble the left mic onto the bucket, using the locating pin for guidance. Press on the buckle interface to fully connect the mic board to the motherboard. Next, we will assemble the right mic board using the locating pin as reference. In a similar fashion to the left mic board, press on the buckle interface to connect the board. Next, use a 3IP screwdriver to secure the screw for the left mic board onto the enclosure. And then use a 3IP screwdriver to secure the right mic board screw onto the enclosure. Now we will assemble the left antenna deck and secure it onto the enclosure with 3 screws using a 3IP screwdriver in the sequence shown. Ensure that the antenna cable tape, if it is reused, is tilted vertically to avoid interference. Next, place the cable tape onto the magnet for the left antenna, and we will assemble the left and right antenna cable onto the cable clips 1, 2, and 3. We will then proceed to assemble the coax connectors for both the left and right antenna onto the motherboard, ensuring that the connectors are aligned before pressing. Next, we will install the infrared camera. First, we will assemble the IR camera PSA onto the bucket. Use the plastic liner as a guide to locate the PSA onto the bucket. Next, assemble the IR camera onto the bucket using the edge on the enclosure for guiding positioning. Finally, gently connect the IR camera connector onto the motherboard. We will install the front camera. Remove the liner in the back of the front camera to expose the PSA. Next, assemble the front camera onto the bucket using the locating pins as guidance. Gently connect the front camera connector to the motherboard afterwards. Next, we will install the plastic deck holder. Assemble the deck into position and fasten the screws in the order shown using a 3IP screwdriver. We will install the rear camera. We will start by placing the new conductive foam onto the laser engraved area of the enclosure. Next, assemble the rear camera using the locating pins for reference. Fasten the 2 screws for the rear camera with a 3IP screwdriver. Remove the release paper from the conductive foam and carefully connect the rear camera connector to the motherboard. Next, we will assemble the top shield lid to cover the rear camera connector by removing the release paper, assembling the tape, and using tweezers to ensure the tape is fully attached. Next, we will assemble the aluminum foil tape using the silver region on the shield lid as guidance. Ensure it is attached smoothly without damage. We will install the battery. Be sure to check the battery space on the enclosure for loose screws or debris. Using both hands, gently lift the battery by the frame on the sides and install it into the enclosure, using the screw joints as reference to locate the battery. Be careful to only handle the battery by the frame on the sides. Also, note to always protect the battery from accidental pokes, impacts, or bends during repair, and account for all screws upon completion of reassembly. Next, we will fasten the battery screws with a 3IP screwdriver. We will install the thermal module and the center shield lid. Assemble the thermal module into the motherboard using the locating pins for reference. Next, fasten the thermal module screws with the 3IP screwdriver, starting first with the non-SOC screws on the outside, and then fastening the SOC screws in the sequence etched on the metal bracket of the module. Next, remove the release paper covering the thermal pad on the center shield lid. Gently lift the battery cable and assemble the center shield lid. Press around the lid to ensure that it is fully assembled and that it is not deformed or defective anywhere. We will assemble the NFC module onto the center shield lid. Next, assemble the module's cable into the connector and engage the latch of the connector to secure it. Remove the release paper on the back of the NFC. We will reconnect the battery connector. First, remove the release paper from the shield can and then gently connect the battery connector to the motherboard. Ensure to press the cable to the shield lid. Next, assemble the battery bracket and fasten it with 2 screws using a 3IP screwdriver. Next, attach 2 pieces of conductive tape onto the center shield lid, and then a piece of foam in the location shown. Now we will install the display. Before beginning this, ensure to remove any residual adhesive from the display edges and that the enclosure has been cleaned of adhesive residue with a cleaning swab and IPA. Lastly, check that there are no loose screws or materials on the surface of the battery or floating around in the device. Next, we will correctly align and assemble the left and right speaker meshes into the enclosure groove. And then we will assemble the top, left, right, and bottom display adhesive onto the enclosure by removing the transparent release paper. Next, carefully connect the display connector to the display and assemble the display shield lid over it. Now, remove the release paper to expose the adhesive for display assembly. Next, align the display onto the enclosure, using the enclosure edges for guidance on positioning of the display. Once the display is aligned, place the plastic bonding frame over the device and then place the foam padding on top of the bonding frame. Next, place 32 kilogram weights on top of the foam pad. Leave the weights on for 2 minutes to ensure the adhesive is fully activated. Lastly, we will reassemble the kickstand. Insert the 2 protruding hinge plates into the corresponding slots in the kickstand and insert the 2 hinge tapes of the kickstand into the enclosure. Fasten the 2 kickstand screws using a 3-eye-piece screwdriver. Congrats! We have successfully reassembled the entire device. A few things to remember during repair. Review the service guide before you begin work for guidance on what needs to be removed for access to other parts. During disassembly and reassembly, count screws to ensure the correct number has been removed or installed. Make sure there aren't any screws or foreign objects inside the device, especially near magnets or the battery region. Look for the wayfinding markings to guide you on where to install screws and the quantity for those. I hope you found this video useful. Check the Microsoft site for more information or to learn about Microsoft's sustainability efforts.